Welcome back to Carry the G in MKE. I'm Aaron Nagler, and joined as always every week, every Monday, it's Camille Davis, the real star of the show. Camille, how was your weekend? Did you get an opportunity to get the bad taste out of your mouth from Thursday night?
That's one thing about a Thursday night game. You get the rest of the weekend to kind of get over it. You spend your Friday just kind of like, well, that was gross. But then you're like, well, at least it's Friday. Like, I'm off work the next couple of days. And
That's
then
true.
knowing I was going to have a Sunday where I'm able to just watch Red Zone all day, like, that's
Yes.
kind of fun too. So,
Yes. It's funny you say that because my girls, on Sunday morning, they're like, Dad, I know you probably, because, they don't pay attention to the NFL at all, except now that Taylor Swift's involved. Now they're kind of interested in that aspect of it. But yeah, like the Sunday morning, like, oh, I know you got to get to the studio. And I'm like, actually, the Packers don't play today. They're like, oh, okay. And then that's it. That's all their level of interest is. And then, but it did afford me the day. Like I did. I literally vegged in front of Red Zone and it was dope as hell. And I'm like, I get why people like this.
yeah.
Like, people who just sit and watch Red Zone. I'm like, I understand it. I like it. But unfortunately, we are here to talk about the Packers, something I didn't enjoy. And we've had the weekend to let the dust settle. What are your thoughts on the embarrassing showing from our team? Because I think that's the word you have to use for that game.
Absolutely. And it's one of those losses where you're like, so much went wrong. Where do I start? Because it's not
Right.
one thing you can point to and say,
Yep.
this is why we lost. It was just a combination of factors. Like the first thing that caught my attention was just watching the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. On
Right.
offense, I spent the last week talking about, oh, I'm so glad the Packers have so much tackle depth and blah, 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 blah. And then here comes Detroit's front, and they're
Oh,
they're
baby.
tearing us apart. They're not even blitzing like that. They're sending 4
No.
guys most of the game, and
Yep.
they're getting home. Even if the Packers did put 6 or 7 guys up front to block, it didn't matter. It did
Yep.
not matter too much. The run game was abysmal. We barely ran the ball as it is. Like the Lions in this game had almost a little bit less yards than the Packers rushing has through the first 4 games in total. Like it's
Yeah.
utterly ridiculous. And you look at the line of scrimmage and us losing on both sides of the balls there. Like the Lions ran 73 plays, like 20 more plays than the Packers did. They had the ball for 38 minutes time of possession in this game, just about. Packers only had it for 22. We lost a turnover battle. Special teams was bad. Like it just all around was not a good day.
Like what's funny, Camille, is like I've spent the weekend trying to flush it and like I'm okay, all right, I'm gonna look at it, be able to look at it dispassionately. But when you lay it out like that, like it's so depressing. And the
Yeah.
thing is like you're so spot on to highlight the line of scrimmage, right? Because we always hear like the game is won, lost in the trenches, and it certainly was on Thursday night. On the offensive side, it's like okay, it's not a fair fight, certainly, because they got some real talent there in the front in Detroit. But at least I understand, like, okay, we put out these 5 guys, right, to
Right.
play offensive line. And that was the matchup with the mostly 4-man rush from the Lions. Okay. And they won most of those matchups. I get that. Like it's not fun. I don't enjoy it, but I get that. What is supremely frustrating is when you flip it around and look at the defensive side of the ball and how many times is Joe Barry going to trot out this light box 2-man line and the opponent's just going to say, oh, okay, thank you, and just run for another first down. And I think Matt may have finally reached his kind of boiling point with that because he did reference it almost specifically in his presser on Monday. But man, I don't know, or on Friday, sorry. But like, to me, that's the thing. But it's not like the offense is scot free here or the
Right.
approach because look, I get they want to throw the ball, and I get Jordan Love, is young, and there are going to be breakdowns, there are going to be miscommunications. But what was surprising to me was you couldn't block that front back in January, and that was with David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins. So now we fast forward, it's week 4, it's Thursday night, primetime game, and you're rolling out Quay Walker and Royce Newman. And your first, I guess, like 10, 11 plays, script wise, are these deep developing routes that you have to hold up front to even begin to entertain completing. And you're trying to block that front, the front you couldn't block last year with all
Right.
pros. Now you're going to roll out journeyman and 7th round picks and think you're just going to pick up where you left off. Like that was frustrating because I get the running game is not going anywhere, but you have to utilize it a little bit just to keep the pressure off your quarterback.
You
That was
do.
my thing.
You do. And I actually tweeted that like during the game. I was like, so the pressure is coming very quickly. I would like to see some quicker, actions here for Love. Like we don't
Yes.
have time for him to wait for plays to develop downfield. He doesn't have time
Nope.
to develop as it is. So
Right.
let's get some quicker routes going. Let's get some slants. Like let's get some comebacks. Let's get some screening action. Like let's get the ball out quickly. Let's use our running backs a little bit more in the passing game as it is. Like that's
Yes.
something else that's been underutilized in my opinion so far this season, where it's like let's just kind of get the ball out to these guys in space and see what they can do. And I get it, not having Aaron Jones for really, let's say 2.5 of these games at
Right.
this point. Like it I know it makes it difficult, but yet and still, like you kind of have to incorporate that into your offense a bit, I think, especially when you're going against a Detroit front where they only need to rush 4 to get
4.
pressure.
Well, and that's been the kryptonite for a lot of these offenses, whether it's the classic West Coast, whether it's the Shanahan model. Like, if you can rush 4 and play coverage, that's the
You're
key,
good.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody wants to do that, but not everybody can. And it's funny because I think Joe Barry's actually, when they get teams into obvious passing situations, like he understands he doesn't need to blitz. When you've got Rashawn wrecking people the way he is, you can rush 4 and play coverage. The problem then becomes the rest of the group, especially at edge, is not holding up their end of the bargain. Like Rashawn can only do so much, and he is the number 1 edge rusher pressure rate wise in the NFL right now, which is great. But that's even that is only like what 33 or 34%. Like all those other snaps where he's not getting home or not creating pressure because he's double teamed or whatever, those other guys have to start picking it up. I mean, Enigbare, Preston Smith, Hollins, whoever. I remember this summer we were so kind
Yeah.
of excited about this edge group, and right now they are lacking in that regard. Like they are not holding up their end of the bargain.
They are, and pointing out what Gary is doing is even more impressive when you understand he's on a pitch count. Like he's not even
Yeah.
out there the entire game, and yet and still he singularly is like pretty much our entire uh
Pass
our
rush.
edge rush.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that's it. It's
no
really
doubt.
Gary by himself holding it down. And I saw someone mention that during the game on Thursday where they're like, oh, Gary's the only person on defense doing anything. And I was like, Quay's having a good game,
I
y'all.
thought
Like
Quay had a good game.
he's
Quay had a
having
good
a good
game.
game. He had a bad moment,
Yes,
but
he did.
he had a good game.
I'm glad you brought that up because like Quay, I mean, it's so unfortunate, especially in the moment. Fans are like so quick to blame a thing or a singular thing, like a moment. Like you said, it was a bad moment, no doubt about it, and it certainly was costly, no question about it. But man, he was one of the few guys on that field on Thursday night who looked like he gave a damn and who actually was pretty damn productive. And sure, you can point to a play here or there where he didn't make a tackle or he made a tackle and got dragged a little bit, blah, blah, blah. But by and large, what did he have? Like 19 tackles? I think
Yeah.
like 16 of them were like stopping guys in their tracks, making, quick plays and decisive moves. And I thought he played a really good game until that moment where he,
Mhm.
really, really, really costly penalty on special teams, which, okay, you should know the rule. And he said afterwards that he does know the rule. He just kind of had a kind of brain fart, what have you. Well, okay, fine. You got to know the rule, right? But B, why is he out there on field goal block? Like earlier in the game, they had McDuffie out there in that position.
Mhm.
I mean, and then why are you even trying to block the field? You just got off the field. You just got to win. Take the win, and let your offense go to work. Like there's so many things about that kind of moment that are frustrating, and not just because Quay Walker had a bad moment. Like there are levels to it. Like it's coaching. Like the coaches reiterated this. I don't know, man. That the lack of detail there. That's something that seems to be, and I hesitate to like put it definitively, but it seems to be a Matt LaFleur thing as far as like the penalties. They've kind of just suddenly become a weekly thing. Like not only just in amounts, but like in severity. I don't know. That's something they got to stamp out, but quick.
Coaching needs to be better on across the fronts because if you look at the Quay play in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking like, man, that was a costly, mistake. And even earlier in the game, another mistake that could have been worse was Reed trying to take the punt return on and catch it on the bounce where you're like,
What is he doing?
you
What
don't
is he
like
doing?
why? Like that should be coached into your brain where you're like, if it's bouncing, I'm getting away from it at this moment. Like, why are we doing these types of things in this game? So like
Yeah.
with Reed, it didn't like we were able to recover the ball, started a little bit
Mhm.
further back than we might have otherwise, but hey, we had the ball. We were able to keep moving forward from that. And then you see what Quay does where he's jumping over the lineman, being too many yards away while he's getting this running start to jump
The
over.
running start, right?
And I think sometimes what it comes down to is you look at the scoreboard and you're like, man, we are down. If I can
Gotta
make
make
an
a play.
impact play
Gotta
right
make a play.
now,
Right.
it can change the course of the game. And like, I get it. I'm sure anybody can understand being in that moment and being like, I want to do something to really impact the game. But like you said, at this point in the fourth quarter, you got to kind of look at the clock,
Man. Yeah.
understand situation. And it's like, okay, if I can get to this, with my hands up by jumping, not over somebody, but just jumping up, cool. Otherwise, let's take this 3 and let's give this ball back to our offense to see what they can do because the game, technically, you could still have done something.
It was still in the
that game.
balance. It was still in the balance right up until that moment. And that's why fans kind of glom onto it, right? Never
Exactly.
mind all the stuff preceding it that put him in
Right.
that situation. But no, to your point, it's so funny that like all summer and kind of like the last year, I've been like drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to Bisaccia, and the idea being, well, if you're on special teams, and I remember Mark Tauscher talking about this, like if you're on special teams, you've got to have the mentality of I'm going to make a play. I'm going to go help win the game. But now we've seen, like, to your point, Quay is there trying to make a play, right?
Mhm.
Keyshawn Nixon, if I see him take out another kickoff from like 8 yards deep in the end zone, I am going to throw Packerman across Fifth Avenue. Like, I'm done with it. Like, I understand, quote, trying to make a play. You have an aggressive mentality, but you keep putting your offense in a really bad spot. Like, if they were doing better work up front in the blocking area, like, yeah, okay, I get it. I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to make a play, etc. But man, I am back to just, can we have competence on special teams? Can we walk before we run here? Because those decisions, that mentality is costing the team right now.
It is. And I saw either right after game or a couple days after when all the coaches are coming up for their media
Right.
availability and they're talking. I can't remember which coach it was, but they mentioned like, with Nixon taking him out, it's like, well, we know that's what he does, but also part of that is if you are taking it out, you have to follow your blocks. Similar
Yep.
to a running back, you need to be following where your
Can't be
blocks are on the
freelancing
field.
back there.
Right,
Yeah.
and if you're freelancing, you might put guys in bad positions where now they might be holding because
Yeah.
you're not
The
in the
angle's bad. Yeah.
exactly. So, like, there's so many different pieces to it. Hey, our punter was good. Waylon is good. Like,
hey, there you go. And the kicker. Like
and the
the
kicker.
two young kicker types are having a good season. I
Yeah,
mean,
but other
that's the
than
funny
that,
part.
it's been sad.
Yeah. No, the Thursday night was tough. Speaking of Thursday night and tough. Tough scene for the gold package
Oh,
crowd,
man.
Camille.
My peoples.
Can I tell you the anger, the simmering anger in my tweet mentions? Like, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. Just because literally at the start of the game, they show, I think it was Huber had a video of everyone in all the blue or whatever. And I just retweeted it with gold package, shaking my head. And I'm joking, right? I'm just poking the bear. Like, I'm just, because it's a running gag, right? I'm always making fun of the gold package. People get so offended. It's your people. You got to tell them. These are your people, Camille.
Yeah,
They got to take a joke, man. Like, come on. You're on national TV. It's a sea of blue. It's a gold package game. You are going to be singled out. You are going to be ridiculed. Sorry, that's the gig. I understand it's not, somewhat not within your control, but you're the gold package. This happening on your watch. You get the heat.
Listen. Okay. I saw a lot of comments like not too much on my Milwaukee people here because I mean, we know the gold package games are the second and fifth home game of the year. Like, we understand the history behind it, why we have the gold package. Thankfully, my job actually has gold package tickets.
Oh, nice.
I
There you go.
was a Milwaukee fan who had the knowledge to say, hey, a Thursday night football game is not one of the ones I would want to go to. When you are going to a football game, when you're going to Lambeau Field, you are required to be an active participant in the game in itself. So that's one thing that I always think about when I'm accepting tickets to a game where I'm saying, no, I can't go this week. You have to be there. You have to be, first of all, at Lambeau, you're outside. You're going to be in the elements. You have to be ready to cheer on defense, like cheer on defense, be loud on defense, be quiet on offense, let the offense work. encourage your
There you go.
team, cheer, so on
See?
and so forth.
Not
Understood.
difficult, right?
But having a Milwaukee game be a Thursday night football game
Yeah.
when 43 is already torn to hell right now. 43 is terrible to drive right now. And I mean, I was leaving work.
We blaming the Department of Transportation now,
Listen,
Camille? Is that
I
the
am
gig?
just saying the factors. I saw Packer fans were late arriving. I know part of it, you're getting off work, you're taking 43, and 43 is
and it's a
torn
mess.
up in
It's a
Milwaukee
mess,
right
yeah.
now. So that's part of the
Right.
delay. But no, jokes aside, for real. It's unfortunate. And I think that people like the clown the gold package for sure. But a Thursday night football game, even if it wasn't a gold package game, we do know Lions fans travel well. They were
Well, now
going
they
to be
do,
on that secondary market. Yeah, they're
100%.
good now. Of course
They
you're going
do.
to travel.
Exactly.
And I don't blame them.
And I love the Packers putting out that statement like, well, this is what we do when we go to. First of all, I can't believe the Packers put out a statement about it.
Shouldn't have
That's
said anything.
amazing to me. No, they shouldn't have said a word. But then they did, and they were like, the statement was essentially, well, this is what happens when Packers travel. Like, this is what we do. We take over stadiums too. Like, that was not it. That was not it.
It missed the mark.
They're trying to deflect the idea that they could, if they, wanted to, like this arbitrary second and fifth home game thing, just stop that.
Yeah.
That's you. That's your decision, Packers. So stop it, because the NFL does not give a crap about the fact that it's a Milwaukee package crowd and it's a Thursday night and they're probably not going to make the drive afterwards, etc. The NFL doesn't care about any of that.
Nope.
So stop with the second and fifth home game stuff.
Exactly.
Just stop.
Put us in a position to succeed for y'all to succeed, Green Bay.
Thank you. What do you talk? What do you hear from the coaches? I want to put my players in a position to succeed. Packers, put Packers fans in a position to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more thing about just the gold package and the traveling and everything like that. I did hear from some people who are Lions fans who just said, hey, I didn't know what to expect going to Lambeau. Our team's finally good. Wanted to go see them play. And they were very just like, wow, first of all, a beautiful place to play football. And the fan base was so kind and considerate, like for it to be a divisional game, they were like, we didn't feel endangered or anything like that. So I do want to just shout out Packers fans for being good fans and good people.
Good hosts.
No matter what the jersey is.
It is funny because you do run into people who maybe have gone to other stadiums as an away fan, and the experience is very different other places. Like I remember when I was on the beat and I went to all the games, right? You go down to Tennessee or Dallas or wherever, man. It is a very different vibe. At Lambeau, it's always like, hey, come have a brat with us, have a beer. Like I'll never forget the first time I took an English friend of mine to a game, I think it was like early 2000s in Lambeau, and we were sitting next to a Vikings fan, and they were like, are you allowed to sit together? And I was like, oh yeah, this ain't Premier League, we're not going to kill each other or shiv each other after the game or anything. Like we talked and joked throughout the whole game, and they couldn't believe it. Like blew their mind. I was like, that's Lambeau,
friendly trash talk is welcome.
Lambeau. Exactly. 100%. Yes. In fact, the last game I went to, like in the stands, was a Bears game, and I had an amazing time with a couple Bears fans who were right next to us. It was just all game. It was so fun. That's it though. Like that's Lambeau. I love that. And I love to hear when people have that experience for the first time, because I do think it is very special and very unique and different comparative to the rest of the league.
Absolutely.
No doubt. All right. We're looking at this Raiders game. The Raiders are, you talk about a mess. I mean, as poor and as bad as the Packers looked on Thursday night, and it was bad and poor. I mean, the Raiders are all over the map as far as how bad they are. And now I understand they're playing a rookie quarterback yesterday, and, they're just not a very good or well-coached team. The Packers, at bare minimum, should be competitive against this team. All right. Like, I don't care if Garoppolo's back there. I don't care what happens as far as McDaniels or even Devontae. God, please, Jesus, let Jair's back be ready, because I need Jair versus Devontae. Like I need water. But like, this is a game where the Packers should be competitive. Like, I understand the Lions are a way ahead of the Packers at the moment. Like, just as roster building, as a team that's developing, they're a better team right now. And I buy that, and I get it. I'll accept that. I will not accept coming out for a third straight game, and this game in question being this Raiders team, and having the offense like unable to pick up a fucking first down via anything other than penalty for like 20 minutes. Like that will be unacceptable. I can't handle that, Camille.
I
Daniel.
agree with you. And I mean, you mentioned it last week when we talked about this Lions game where you're like, we can't get off to a slow start against Detroit because like it's going to kill us. Like it's going to be a problem.
And it did.
And it did. And we see how the Packers tend to get off to these slow starts, and they can't have that. Like, you don't want to give this Raiders team that is already kind of wheeling early on in this season. You don't want to give them a spark to continue the rest of their season with. Like, you look at Josh Jacobs. He hasn't had a great start to the season after the holdout and everything, but
here comes the Packers run defense.
Exactly. Like, this is a time where you can make a
Lord.
statement. We know Jacobs is a good running back. Hasn't had a great start. We saw him kind of start getting things moving a little bit against the Chargers this past weekend, but like this Packers,
but they fell so far behind that like they couldn't, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to stick with the run when you're down 24-7 or whatever it is. Right. So yeah, here comes the Packers as a get right game.
Exactly.
That's the way they're looking at it.
Exactly. And you don't want to be that from that. You have to play spoiler. Like the Raiders have to be your get right game, not you're being the Raiders get right game. You know what I mean? So like they got to stop Josh Jacobs. And we saw the Chargers the Raiders offensive line give up quite a bit to the Chargers.
Sacks? Good Lord. Let's go. Come on.
No Joey Bosa.
I know, right?
And Khalil Mack still had 6 sacks by himself. Like it was
it's time to feast. That's my hope. That's my dream.
Talk about get right.
From your words to the football god's ears. That's what I'm talking about. Camille, it's always a pleasure. It's always lovely talking with you. It is kind of like therapy. It's good stuff. It's good that you're here to speak up for the gold package crowd.
Got to.
Even though I will never stop giving them grief. But you have some wise words in that regard. I will endeavor to remain calm throughout this week and kind of last through Monday night before blowing the gasket. It's going to be a lot of fun. Camille, it's great as always. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you next week.
For sure.